Welcome back, everybody, to another edition of Slam Talk Sports. Yes. Footy is finally back. It's a beautiful Thursday afternoon here in Melbourne, Victoria, Australia. And there's no football on here in town, but boy oh boy am I excited for what's going to unfold tonight over the SCG. Sydney take on Carlton. The endless summer is over. That cruel summer is finally done. We can stop pretending that we love tennis, or we love cricket, or we love basketball a little bit more than football, because it's just not true. No more mistruths, no more misnomers. It's time for some cold, hard facts, and that is, football is ready to take over our lives once again. Before we get stuck into it, before we dissect and divulge and put all our time and energy into this great game, I ask you one thing. Make sure you follow me on socials. Yes, Slam Talk Sports on TikTok, on Instagram, on YouTube, and of course on X, where you can find my SuperCoach advice and any betting suggestions. I'll be there, don't worry. Every single day for the rest of this AFL season, I'll be putting out plenty of content. But the biggest thing I want to talk about today, it isn't about Sydney versus Carlton. It isn't about how Essendon are going to defy all the odds and win 8 games this year. It's about SuperCoach. Yes, this is my SuperCoach team reveal, V2. The first version I put out about a month ago, and there's been many changes since then, don't you worry. Of course, we'll lock in our teams next Thursday for the first official lockout, and it is a rolling lockout as well. But before then, I want to give you a little bit of an insight onto the team I'm selecting so far for SuperCoach in 2026. I must pull it up right now. Now, here it is. As you can see, there's a lot of holes in this team. I've picked the players I think you should absolutely be starting in 2026. We've got Connor Rozee there in the back line. We've got Jaques, who's playing tonight. We've got Marcus Bont and Zach Butters in the midfield. Of course, we've got Jaques Smith as well. Dyson Sharp on the bench. Tom Blamires, we'll figure that out. I think it's Blamires. In the ruck line, I'm starting Lachlan McAndrew, and I've got Liam Reedy on my bench as well. And in the forward line, I've got Sheasel, I've got Flanders, I've got Philippou, I've got Lombard, and I've got Robertson. And on the bench, if he's selected, I've got Todd Marshall. I think these are the players you can very confidently select in your starting team. But as the pieces around them, which we'll discuss today, they will form the rest of your side and give you the either biggest disadvantage or advantage through the first 6 weeks of the season. Let's start with the defensive line. Now, there's a player a lot of people own. He kicked 4 goals against Essendon on the weekend. He also had about 28 touches in that game as well. I'm not talking about Jaques Sinclair. I'm talking about Nazaya Wanganeen-Miller. Priced at $622,000, people are starting to fade Nas. Now, I understand it slightly. He's at a very high price. He might play more forward this year. The cheapies which he got off the half-back line last season might not be as readily available. But what I'm worried about if I don't start Nas is those ceiling games. Look at the start of his season. He starts against Collingwood on Sunday in opening round, which won't count for SuperCoach. But I don't think he's going to lose much money in that game. Apologies while I blow my nose. I've got a little bit of a, not a cold, I think it might be hay fever. I've had one Telfast, but it's not doing the trick. Nazaya, I'm going to start him, and here is why. It's the upside. It's the spike games. This could be a Garrett Jr.-like player. It could be a Marcus Bontempelli-like player. Now, I know different roles. Nazaya is a 6'2" halfback flanker, which has graduated now to the midfield and now playing as a forward. Not the same type of player, but the impact, the scoring potential, and the ceiling potential is what terrifies me as a non-owner. A lot of people want to start Jaques Sinclair. That's fine. Over the last 3 seasons, Jaques Sinclair has been 110, 110, 110. You're not going to go wrong starting Jaques Sinclair. But I also don't think he has quite the ceiling of Nazaya. Nazaya to start the year plays Collingwood. I think he'll go all right there. Collingwood do not tag. He should be able to run his own race. In round 1, he plays Melbourne. He dropped 150 on Melbourne at the back end of last season. In round 2, the Saints play the Giants. The Giants are missing Tom Green. They're missing Sam Taylor, who might have even matched up on him in the forward line. They're also missing Toby Bedford at the moment. They're missing a whole host of players. So it is a depleted Giants team. Not a big worry. Don't think a big price drop will happen there. Then he plays Brisbane. Brisbane's tough. but it's at Marvel Stadium. I don't think he's going to get destroyed. And again, Brisbane very, very rarely tag. So there's no clear price drop I can see in the first couple of rounds for Nazaya. Round 4, he has a bye. Then out of that bye, Nazaya and the Saints will play Port Adelaide away and Adelaide away, both at Adelaide Oval. Now, no travel for Nazaya. I'm assuming he'll be the poster boy of Gather Round. Well, he should be as a South Australian local. So I would be very surprised if he doesn't put up 2 decent efforts against Port Adelaide and Adelaide. Well, that's, 6-7 rounds of the season. And I don't see a very obvious tag or an obvious price drop. But I also see huge ceiling gains from Nazaya. Him versus Sinclair, I'm siding with Nazaya right now, unless something at opening round tells me otherwise. At D2, I think just about every person that plays SuperCoach that has a clue has Connor Rozee at D2. He's been there since day one. Great roll off the half back line. Should be flirting with a 110 average. Their soft run we've spoken about at length. They play West Coast. They play North Melbourne. They play Essendon. They play bad teams to start the year. He should feast. He did against West Coast in the practice match. Now, that game was not something that resembles AFL football. At least I don't think so. I think West Coast have to be better than that. But it is the type of tasty matchup that a halfback flanker like Connor Rozee can take advantage of. There's also times to go into the midfield, get some touches there. He's a very versatile player, so I'm happy with Connor. Also, no early bye. We're going to lock him into our teams. Now, D3, you can go a couple of different ways. I personally am siding towards a mid-pricer in Lachlan Blakiston. Blakiston, priced just under $300,000, will have the number 1 ruck role at Essendon for at least the first 5 to 6 weeks. And at that point, he will then acquire DPP. He's only a defender right now, but he will become a ruck defender in that time. Because, well, there's not going to be another ruckman that challenges him to that position unless Essendon also want to play Vicentini, which I don't think they do. And Nick Bryan is currently TBC. He's recovering from an ACL injury he suffered in Gather Round last year against Melbourne. About round 5 or 6 this year will put him at 12 months. I think that's realistic for a return for Nick Bryan. And at the same time, he'll probably play VFL at least one game. So Blakiston will get the cash generation, he'll get the positional change, and he could even potentially play beyond those first 5 or 6 rounds, which is why I think he's one of the safer mid-price players to start your season. There's no early buy, and we know the role is locked in. He's likely to sign a multi-year contract extension as well in the coming days, just to show how confident Essendon are that he can perform in this role. Happy with a mid-pricer there at D3. Other people want to stack their defence, play a Whitfield there, or a Lockie Ash, or even someone a little bit cheaper, like a Colby McKercher, who was originally in my team, or an Archie Roberts. I don't disagree that that's a bad strategy. Depends how confident you are fielding the defensive rookies. I'm probably a little bit more confident than other people because I see the scoring potential and the fact that some of them are playing for some pretty ordinary teams. But it depends what your school of thought is there. Whitfield's still a good selection. I'm personally not going to start him just due to the injury history, due to the early bye, and due to the Giants' injuries. I'm unsure if he'll absolutely stay at halfback. With Glenn Oliver joining the team, with how good Callaghan and Tom Green have played, halfback was unquestioned. He was going to chop up in that role. Now, I'm not as 100% certain he will play that position for the entirety of the season, and also the concussion history is why I'm staying away in the early days, but he will have some very strong performances in the first month. Similar to Lockie Ash, I owned Ash last year. I was big on him. He averaged, 109, 110, faded slightly towards the end of the season, but an uber consistent player who's going to have a lot of ball off that Giants half back line. And the other player I mentioned was Archie Roberts and Colby McKercher. Now, they're both about $450,000. You think they're underpriced if you think they're 100 average players. But at this moment, I haven't picked either of them. I've gone with just the 2 premium defenders, Blakiston as a mid-priced option, and we're going to have a look at Roberts and McKercher. If they absolutely pop in the first 2 weeks, the role's there, 25, 30 touches, we could potentially pivot to go get one of them. But right now, I don't think they're going to outprice us early, just based on the fact that Essendon have a tough fixture. They could potentially struggle. We don't know what Roberts' position is 100%. And Colby McKercher coming off that finger injury does worry me slightly. Not because he hasn't been running. Obviously, he'll be in tip-top shape. It's a finger injury. But just in my history of playing Supercoach, I haven't picked players that have injury-interrupted pre-seasons. It might just curb them 5 to 10 points down on what their potential is in the early days, and that's enough for me to not start. Now, let's look at the rookies, the rookie price players in your defense. I'm going to pick Sam Grill from the Richmond Football Club, who I think should be starting in round 1. Top 10 selection. There are other top 10 selections. Sam Cumming did get injured in with a practice match, but Sam Grill played very well against Essendon. He played well in the first half against Melbourne before Lightning destroyed any data we were going to get out of the second half of that game. So I'm confident with Sam Grill in my defensive backline. And also, I have, who's my other young player? Other young player I have selected, well, we have Josh Lindsay. I don't know whether we can 100% start Josh Lindsay. We'll have a look. Hopefully he gets a game early days with the West Coast Eagles, one of the best kicks in the draft. But also don't mind for my defensive bench, Lockie Jaques, who's been picked for the Western Bulldogs to debut on the weekend. And there's one other player that I've got to put in my defensive ranks. It's not Wade Dirksen, who hasn't been picked to play tonight. It's not Selwood, because I think that Jaques might be just ahead of Selwood in terms of getting a spot. We'll come back to them. I have another defensive player. I'll just put Selwood in now as a placeholder. But I've forgotten him, but there is another player that I'm a bit more confident to put in my defensive backline. But of course, rookie players, they're all going to change over the next 7 days. We'll move forward to the midfield. Now, I've got Bont and I've got Butters. And the reason why is because these two players have been so consistent over the last few seasons. Obviously, Bont averaged 130 last season. Zach Butters 121. But Bont has been 125 plus for 3-4 plus seasons. Zach Butters has been a modicum of consistency as well over those 3 years. And unless something drastically changes, I can't see them being unseated from the top 3-4 in the defensive, in the midfield line, apologies. What you want to do is pick keepers. You want to pick a few keepers, at least, I think, 10 to 12, who are absolutely rolled gold premium selections who will not fail you through the rest of the season. And if they do lose a little bit of money, they have a couple of bad games, that's okay. You've picked them to play for you for every single round that they can outside their buys and to put up premium scores. And that's why I picked Bont. That's why I picked Butters. They might lose a little bit of money, in particular Bont, who's 705,000, but we know how consistent he is. We know he's an automatic captain option pretty much every single week. And he's Marcus Bontempelli. I don't need to say a whole lot more. At some point, you're going to need him. And rather than hiding behind the couch in fear that he might drop a 180 on you, just pick him and worry about the 100k price loss at some point during the year, knowing you've got the best player in fantasy. Also, Zach Butters. Butters went and put an absolute masterclass against West Coast. He could have kicked 5 goals on the weekend in that preseason game. I'm not too worried about what he does against West Coast. We all know what everyone's going to do against West Coast, but he's just super consistent. Hard to tag. The only player that had success was Oisin Mullen from the Geelong Cats, who held him, I think, to 260s throughout the year. And the thing is with Butters, the thing I love about Butters is if he has a bad one, he responds with a monster. Usually, if he drops a 70 or, an 80, he responds with a 150 plus. He's done it all throughout his career. We saw last year in the Granny, for your Supercoach League players like myself, he dropped a monster, 180 against the Gold Coast Suns. That's not an easy matchup. That's against Matt Rao, against Noah Anderson, against Took Miller. He said, stuff ya. Ken Hinkley's last game, I'm dropping 190. I'm going to do what I like because I'm Zach Butters, and that's why he's one of the most picked players in Supercoach, and he's a lock in my team. Now it gets interesting. How do you feel these other midfield spots? A lot of names being thrown around. A Jaques, a McCluggage, an Anderson, a Goulden, a Heaney, a Luke Davies-Uniacke. All these names have been thrown up as good, viable Supercoach selections for 2026. What am I going to do? I'm going to whisper to my Supercoach team that we need Nick Daicos. Nick Daicos has to be in your Supercoach team. He is one of the most consistent players in Supercoach. His run isn't too scary in the early days either. Obviously, opening round doesn't count, but he plays the Saints. In the past, Windhager has tagged him, but Windhager has been earmarked for a halfback role for this season, so I don't see any likely tags coming from St Kilda. Round 1, Collingwood play the Crows. Now, good record against the Crows, in my opinion. They're not a tagging team. Peatling put some intention into him at the back end of last year, but I still think he kicked, 1 goal, 2. had about 100 SuperCoach points in that game. Then they played in the finals as well, and Jaques wasn't too worried about any tags in that one. Round 2, Collingwood play. They have the bye in round 2, which isn't ideal, I know. But beyond that, I think it's a nice fixture for them. They play the Giants, Bedford, likely to be out, we're not sure, but no Tom Green, and they're missing a whole host of players, so it should be a win for the Pies at Marvel Stadium, and it shouldn't be too difficult a matchup for him. Then Brisbane in round 4, you think, well, Brisbane, they're one of the hardest teams to score against. You are correct, but Nick Daicos in Brisbane has dropped to 170 before. Nick Daicos in games they've struggled has kicked 2 goals and had 30 touches. Brisbane's not a worry for Nick Daicos. He's had some great games against this great team because they don't really tag, nor do they have anyone that can go with him. It's very hard to stop Nick because of his great endurance, his cardio, his willingness to get the ball all over the ground, and his ability for your super coaches to have 15 touches in the last quarter. Nick Daicos can say, I'm on 85, I'm on 90, I'm going to get 130 because I'm going to absolutely pick it up in the final term. Sometimes the game might be over. Sometimes the game could be on the line. It doesn't matter because Nick Daicos is very usually, is that a great way to put it? He's usually a good fourth quarter performer to get those stats up into that 35-40 region, which is great for our Supercoach teams. I like Nick. He's super consistent. I'm picking him in my starting team. And next to him, I'm going to pick another star midfielder. As you can see with my team, with McKercher starting in my rucks, I'm going to have a bit of a stacked midfield this season, which is not something I usually do. Usually you want to try and figure out, okay, this midfielder is playing well, he's got a good fixture, he's elevated, he's not playing as well, he's playing more of a defensive role, he's not getting those easy hands on the outside, no, he's playing on the half forward line, what have I done? I've spent $600K on Zach Merritt. Don't do that this year, okay? Pick these gun mids who play inside and out and are constantly looking for the handball receives. It's Bontempelli, it's Butters, it's Daicos, and it's Noah Anderson, in my opinion. Average 115, he flew home. Most Brownlow votes over the last, 10 weeks of the season. So I do feel he's even getting better and better as Noah Anderson progresses into his career. All-Australian last season, and most importantly for your Gold Coast Suns players, it is that soft early draw. The Gold Coast Suns start the season against the West Coast Eagles in round 1 for Supercoach. I'm expecting a 140, 150 at a minimum. I mean, we just saw what Port Adelaide did to West Coast. What are the Gold Coast Suns going to do to them in a real game of football? In round 2, the Gold Coast Suns then play... That can't be right. That can't be right. The Gold Coast then play Richmond. Oh, geez, he might put 170 up on those Tigers at the MCG. Round 3, the Gold Coast Suns have it bye. But then in round 4, they play Melbourne. So it's one of the softest, earliest fixtures you've seen for a Supercoach perspective. And I want to get one of the Gold Coast Suns rolled gold mids. Matt Rowell is out with a finger injury. So that's why I think Noah Anderson is a delightful selection for 2026. Now, what do we put next to Noah Anderson? We've got Bont, we've got Butters, we've got Daicos, we've got Anderson. What do we do? Well, I think it's time for some mid-prices. I personally think it's time for some mid-prices, but in this current version of the team, we're going to fit one more Premo in, and that Premo will be playing tonight. It is Mr. Errol Goulden, who averaged 104 points last year, coming back from a fractured ankle. He was below his usual standards. He wasn't used in the same time on ground. He wasn't really playing as pure on ball as we expect him to play this year. I think he's underpriced by about 7 to 8 points. I think he averages about 113. I'm pretty confident that Errol is going to have a ripping season. And at 5'6", he seems to be a decent value. I could see him rising to 630 at some point. I don't think he's going to massively outprice you if you don't start with him. And you look at their early fixture, Carlton tonight shouldn't affect his pricing, really. Should get around 100. And then he plays Brisbane at the SCG. And then the Swans play Hawthorn away. And then the Swans play... have their bye, in round 3. And then in round 4, they play West Coast, which could be a 150. So the draw isn't too bad, but I'm just confident that the Swans are going to have a really good year. And he's kicking the ball to Charlie Curnow. So that's goal involvements. That's score assist. Their forward line this year, the Swans, is way different to last season. Logan McDonald didn't play. Joel Amati barely played. Charlie Curnow wasn't there. Tom Papley wasn't there. They had all these different players in their forward line. Tom McCartan was playing full forward for the first 4 weeks. Now you get Goulden back. Now you get your fully fit midfield. In addition to a completely new forward line, I just think the score assists are going to go up, the score involvements, Goulden's going to be getting even more handballs, and he's getting more CBAs. So I just see the scope for a great Goulden season, and at 5.66, I'm happy to start him. Next to him, we're going to put some mid prices, because I'm not as confident in the rookie selections in the midfield to score that highly for this season, but I do like the elevated price players. So let's look at someone like a Hayden Young. Hayden Young is in 52% of sides. Now, Youngie had a slight ankle concern at training during the week, but Fremantle do seem confident he will line up for round one. Round one for Fremantle, they will play the Geelong Cats at GMHBA. Not the easiest matchup. They could potentially get pumped like last year. Then they play Melbourne at Optus Stadium over in Perth. That should be a tasty one. And then they play Richmond at Optus Stadium as well. So those should be two absolute monster scores for Youngie, which is why I think you need to start him. If attention comes, I think you can handle it. You're not looking for a 110 average. You want something around 100. We know he can kick goals. We know how penetrating and damaging he is with that left foot. And at 389,000, he seems like a pretty obvious selection. I'm with the 52% that own him. If you're with the other side, you're betting on him to get injured. So you're pretty much saying he can't perform to this price point. He can't get better because he's so injury prone. What was it, 5 games last season, including finals? I don't think that's the norm. The year before, he played a full season to average 101 points. I think we get back to somewhere near there. Whether it's 95, 98 average, that's fine. That'll carry you through the first 6 to 8 weeks, and then you think about trading him to an uber premium. The player I want to put next to him, though, is someone even more injury-prone than Hayden Young. It is Mr. Darcy Parish, yes, DP3. My, he's a friend of the show. Not this show, my old show with my great friend Nick called Time On. He came on the podcast, he's about to have his 200th game, and talked about his career. Now, his career up until that point was pretty good. I gotta say, 2021 Parish was an absolute star. 2022 Parish, not quite as good. 2023, a little bit injury prone. 24 and 25, I don't know what happened. He hasn't been on the park. Essendon's fitness staff got sacked. He's now $334,000. And this is a man who averaged 88 last year with like one leg and one calf working. What could happen with a full preseason, which is what we've seen? An interrupted preseason? No. There was no injuries. There was no interruption. It was seamless. It was perfect. Now he steps foot on the field of the MCG next Friday night against Hawthorn, which is, in my opinion, a relatively soft matchup for an inside midfielder. I think he's just got to stay healthy. I know that's the biggest thing. Like, of course, you can just say he's got to stay healthy. If he stays healthy, he's 100 average. He's going to make you 150 grand. And just get through the first 8 weeks, you can piss him off. You say, Darcy, you've done your job. You gave me points. You made me money. See ya. Out the door, okay? Because you're not required anymore. Because I've got my eyes on Isaac Heaney. Because I've got my eyes on a now healthy Matt Rowell. That's his job. Make money, play his role for 6 to 8 weeks, and piss him off. Hayden Young might be a keeper. Darcy Parish, in my opinion, will not be a keeper because of the injury history, but also he's just not quite as good as he was in 2021, 2020. Just play your role and piss off. Darcy, all you're going to do. Similar to me. I'm just going to play my role and I'm going to piss off in about 10 minutes and end this podcast. Let's move to the midfield bench. I'll start with Dyson Sharp. Dyson Sharp, one of Essendon's top picks from last year. He should play round one. He's a gun inside midfielder. I don't know how much time he gets in the midfield, just because you've got Merritt, you've got Parish, you've got Durham, you've got Caldwell, you potentially have Roberts there as well. There's a lot of names that are going to be moving through that midfield, and it's not one of the strongest midfields in the comp either. So there's just, I don't know how much time Dyson Sharp will get on the ball, but that's fine. 150k, he's going to have to play due to the position Essendon are. I mean, they're rebuilding. They can't just play all the older players and say, oh no, this is our attempt to win. We're gonna be very competitive. We're going to be really good against the good teams. No, in reality, Dyson Sharp is the future and he needs to get minutes into him. So this is why I'm okay picking him on our midfield bench. And next to him, I have Jack Carroll, who's been earmarked for a halfback role for St Kilda. Now, with Nasiah Wanganeen-Miller now moving further up the field to the midfield and the forward line, Jack Carroll on the halfback line should be relatively safe for the first 5 weeks, but we do get the opening round cheat code. We can see how he performs against the Pies on Sunday night. And finally, Tom Blamires, I think it's Blamires. He's 99k. He was the Fothergill round medal. I think that's right, the Fothergill round medal from last season in the VFL, which is given to the best young player. For the last 20 years, the best young player from the VFL has been drafted, and at 99k to a pretty shit-house team in North Melbourne, I could see him playing early on. Hopefully in a half-back role, next to McKercher, or next to Daniel, or next to Hardiman. Whatever way they want to splice it for the first couple of weeks, I just hope he plays for at least the first 4 to 5 rounds and makes us some money at 99k. Now, this is it. This is the position. This is the line that divides all super coaches. I'm not talking about the Barassi line that divides NRL and AFL fans. I'm talking about that damn ruck line. What do we do? Last year, the best player, I reckon he was the best player, was Brodie Grundy. When you factor in what he did in the second half of the season, his big scores, his scores for finals, his ability to elevate people like myself up the rankings once I acquired him, he was pretty much the SuperCoach MVP. Do you want to start him? At what price is he? Brodie Grundy is $677,000. Are you confident starting him with the changes in the ruck rules? With the lasso rule now, meaning there's less throw-ins, the ball's just constantly in play, with the fact that they're just going to throw that damn pigskin ball up. Is it pigskin? Anyway, they're going to throw that damn ball up rather than waiting for your lumbering rucks to attend the contest. Is it all going to be in his favour? I still think Grundy's going to be pretty good. I think he's going to average at least 115. Last year was a big bounce back year for Brodie. But he had so many great possession change games. So many games where he'd had hit-outs against absolute scrub ruckmen and just put up big, big scores. Last 2 rounds, concussed, 0. And the last game of the year, I think he got 100. So he didn't finish the year quite as strong as the previous rounds, obviously. But he was averaging about 140, 150 for a good 8-week period. I'm not going to start Brodie because similar to a lot of people, I don't want to spend big on the rucks until we know what these rule changes will do to scoring. I still think great ruckmen like Tristan Sherry, Max Gawn, and Brodie Grundy will dine out on young, inexperienced ruckmen. So you got to look at that schedule. You got to look at the fixture and think, okay, for the next 6 weeks, Brodie Grundy plays the likes of Blakiston or Vicentini or Matthew Flynn, and think, oh, hold on. Okay, we need to play him now for the next 6 weeks. I need to pay up, even if it's a little bit overs, because these 6 weeks, he's going to be dropping 150. He's my captain. This is my chance to storm up the rankings. You've got to identify that. But to start the year, I don't see him as having some cupcake ruck run, and I do have a slight worry about the rule changes. Similar to Tristan Sherry. Sherry averaged 127 points last year. If you had him, you probably would have won your SuperCoach League. If you had him in the last 6 weeks, you probably would have won, unless you were me playing against my great friend Jaques when he captained him in the grand final against me, but that's a whole different matter. I had Tristan Sherry for about 3/4 of the season. He was magnificent. But I'm still worried about the ruck rule changes. I'm worried about the fact he is the heaviest scorer from contested possession situations. He gets the ball off the deck, he handballs it. He goes the ball at the ruck, he kicks it or handballs it. He's not a tap-out artist. He's good at tap-outs. He can get your hit-outs to advantage, but he is a contested beast. He's like playing ruck against a polar bear. It's like playing ruck against a grizzly bear. He will wrap you up like a boa constrictor, then get the ball out himself and start a scoring chain. He does it all. Great tackler. Beast of a human. Seems like a really nice guy. I'm not starting him in SuperCoach, even though his run is incredible. Port Adelaide, round 1. West Coast, round 2. Essendon, round 3. Jesus. Carlton, round 4. Brisbane, round 5. And Richmond, round 6. A team he dropped 180 on at the back end of last season. The run is good. I'm just going to save a little bit of money with my rucks. I'm going to go McAndrew at ruck 2. I'm going to figure out along the way who the best rucks are and hope and pray that I've got the right midfielders, because I'm starting 5 Premos. They all need to pull their weight and drop bombs on bombs on bombs in the first 6 rounds, which means I've got to find another ruckman. And the ruckman I've landed on is none other than Timmy English. Yes, Tim English. Average 128 a couple of years back. Last year was a 110 average. I saw with my own eyes what this man can do. Last Friday night down in Footscray. Yes, Foots Crazy. I was there with my good friends Marcus, Tlen, Nick, and DJ. you know what we saw? We saw a Tim English masterclass, what we saw. 2 goals, 20-ish touches, playing just wax on, wax off with the Red Diamond, Ed Richards, and Marcus Bonampelli, and Libba as well. They're all having a feeding frenzy on those Hawks. Now, preseason games, that's fine. Say whatever you want. It's role to me. It's how he moved. He moved like a midfielder. He moved like prime Tim English. There's no interruptions to his preseason. I think with the ball constantly in play, a runner like Tim is going to blow big rucks up. The doggies' second ruck, we're not sure right now. It could be Sam Darcy. They might go a different path. Might be, I don't know if it's going to be Jordan Croft, but Tim English do most of the ruck work at the Dogs, and he's a great aerobic athlete. Not amazing at the hit-outs, but he can leap. So this new centre bounce rule where you can't engage early, you can't put your arm across, you've got to compete up in the ruck, you've got to go and try and win that ball at its highest point. That's going to favour Tim English. Also, good possession getter. He gets it around the grounds, particularly at Marvel Stadium. There's no elements. He's a good mark, but he's going to run teams ragged, getting out into the flanks, getting out onto the wing. That's Timmy's go. I hope these ruck rule changes benefit someone like Tim English. So I'm starting him in my SuperCoach team. Lachlan McAndrew at Ruck 2. I think that is one of the biggest calls this year, but I do really, really like McAndrew at Ruck 2 because he's starting. He's probably the second best rookie price player we have behind Jagger Smith. And he's got the role on a team that was top 4 last year. Do the Crows have the best midfield? No. But by round 2 or 3, when Rankin's in there, Dawson's in there, Rochelli's in there, Saligo's in there, there's names I'm forgetting. When they're at their full complement, I think they're going to be a pretty decent football team. So McAndrew, who is a tap-out artist, who has proven that he could perform at an AFL level over the, is small, that one or 2 games at the Sydney Swans, but also what he's done in the preseason, they're going to favour him, they're going to give him time. I just think it's a great selection, and you can use that money so wisely in other areas if you're confident McAndrew can deliver mid-80s, which is what an average ruckman will do. Let's go to the forward line. Harry Sheezel is locked in everyone's SuperCoach forward lines, which makes a lot of sense to me because he's clearly the best forward. He averaged 118 points 2 years ago, only 108 last year playing a midfield forward role. Obviously that 118 was as a freewheeling halfback when he's one of the best halfbacks in the league. That is obviously going to score you a lot of points, but now he's graduated, what's this, year 4 for Harry Sheezel. I think he's going to be a rolled gold, fully fledged midfield star. So at 580, everyone's going to pick him. You should pick him as well. And my forward 2, the player I'm going to put next to him is not going to be a kid. It's not going to be a mid-pricer. It's going to be someone I think is going to get back to his absolute best, and that is Christian Petrarca. Christian Petrarca, for all the reasons I mentioned before with Noah Anderson's early fixture, is just primed for a big bounce-back season. At 522,000, he's not overpriced. He has that West Coast matchup early. He has a Melbourne and Richmond matchup as well early. And throughout his career, somehow, Christian Petrarca has always scored well in Queensland. I don't know whether it's the slick conditions, it's that nice weather, it's the fact that he's getting some good produce. There might be some, better things to cook with in Queensland. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. But anyway, he's better up north. 522, his DPP track will get back to his best. And the way I look at it is his DPP because he played so much forward last year. The Gold Coast Suns didn't recruit him to be a forward. You've got Jamara Ugle-Hagan playing resis. You've got Jed Walter playing resis. You've got Ben King, who I think will win the Coleman, setting up in that forward line, along with an Ethan Reid. And you just so many options in that forward line for the Suns that he won't be anchored there. Bailey Humphrey and him will be interchangeable. They'll swap. They'll flick around. And I just reckon with that early fixture, that track will be clearly one of the top 6 forwards. I'm trying to pick players that I think are clearly in the top 5 to 6 of their position and lock them away as long as they're not grossly overpriced, or I think there's a tag or a bad matchup in the first 6 weeks. I can't see that for any of these players. Next to him in the forward line is a player everyone's going to own. It is Mr. Sam Flanders. Now, Flanders, what's his ownership at the moment? Sam Flanders, currently owned by 67% of teams. I think if you don't own Flanders, you're not trying. I'm sorry to say, but Flanders is 400,000. He's sub 400,000. We know what he did a couple of years ago at the Gold Coast Suns in that halfback midfield freewheeling role. He averaged like 115 points. He was my breakout player for 2023. And you know what happened? Stewie Jew played him in the forward pocket and then dropped him. And I was like an absolute clown. What happened the next year? 118 average. Thank you, Stewie. Thank you for that one. But talking about 2026, you must own Sam Flanders. I mean, he has the early buy, but it doesn't matter because of the production you're going to get at 400,000 from a forward. He's not going to play, at least we don't hope, in the forward line that much for the Saints. We hope he's one of their inside mids. He's going to have a lot of pill. Potentially roll back to the half-back line. Similarly, because it's going to be Sinclair down there. There is no Rozee. Maybe get some cheap pill that way, but you've got to own Sam Flanders. I also think you've got to own his teammate, Mattaes Philippou. Mattaes Philippou is 168,000. Injuries. That's the only reason he's 168,000. The former top 10 pick out of South Australia. He could average in the 80s quite easily if he's gifted a midfield role or a half-forward mid role. Scoreboard impact will be there. Possessions-wise, I don't know how many touches he will get when you factor in the fact that Rozee is there, Sam Flanders is there. There's other... He's probably around that third or fourth midfield. I mean, Saints fans, I know you're listening, you're screaming out some name to me, like Max Hall is going to get midfield minutes ahead of him, potentially, but Philippou is going to be around the mark, and at 168,000 in your forward line, he's a must pick. Similar is Leo Lombard from the Gold Coast Suns. He's a must pick at 119,000. Reason why, former top 10 draft pick, will be afforded opportunities this season, whether it's half forward, whether it's wing. I don't think he's going to get many CBAs. I don't think he's going to have a huge midfield role because of the plethora of midfield talent there is up there on the Gold Coast. But they're looking to nurture him. They're looking to get games into him. And he's a strong-bodied... I mean, his dad was freaking Hector Lombard. He knocked people out with one punch. What do you think Leo Lombard's going to do with one kick? He's going to score 30 SuperCoach points. Okay, pick him. Lock him away. He's going to play early. He looked great in the practice matches. And at that low price, for a top 10 draft pick, you've got to put him in your team. Also, Devon Robertson. Dev Robertson. How often have we said that name over the last 3 seasons? At the Brisbane Lions, he could not crack into that midfield. I mean, how could you? Neil, McCluggage, Dunkley, Ashcrofts. It's too loaded. Then you throw in someone like Jared Lyons who can't even get a game, sitting there watching it, playing the VFL. How's Dev Robertson going to get a game? Well, now he has, because he's at the West Coast Eagles. His basement price, $119,800. He had like something crazy, like 85% CBAs in that practice match. I mean, they lost by 85 points as well, but that is a great number to look at. I mean, Harley Reid's going to be involved in the midfield. You'd think Durs may get some time in there, along with a Jack Graham, but it's not a strong midfield. We know this. The Eagles have really struggled in that area over the last couple of seasons. So unless Liam Baker just gets thrown into the guts week on, week out, I think that it's going to be Robertson time. So at that price, lock him into your teams. And obviously, no early buy is great as well. On the bench, I've got Todd Marshall. Now, Todd Marshall, coming back from an Achilles injury for Port Adelaide, was traditionally a third tall forward and someone that can move up the ground. If he plays, it will hopefully be in the back line where he's played in the preseason. And intercepting third tall is a good scoring pattern. It's a good scoring option. It's a good formula to make money. At 147,000, he only needs to average in the 60s, and he's going to be a tiny little choice. Needs to play, obviously, though. He's on the fringe of selection for Port Adelaide under their new coach, Josh Carr. But I'm hopeful a player they've developed and invested a lot of time into will get a game in round 1. Now, this bench option, this bench selection, is one that I'm not entirely certain on. I mean, I've got Reedy there in my ruck line. It's my ruck 3, as you'll see once I correct it in a second. But who's the other forward at a basement price? You've got Artie Jones, who played mainly half forward for the Dogs. I mean, he averages about 28 throughout his career. It's terrible. But he's DPP, he's 119k. He could be an option for this year if he shows something opening round. Also, you got Lockie Doverston from North Melbourne. He was one of the early picks in this last year's draft. I think, pick 13 or 14. He's a lively small forward. He's already in 20% of SuperCoach teams. He scored, I think, 99 points against Collingwood in the Pracky. Now, that Pracky you take with a grain of salt because Pies missing so many players, but also North was so amped up and so eager to win that game that he was crucial. He was so involved in the second half. He kicks what ultimately is the clinching goal, which is probably worth 20 points scaling in SuperCoach. But I do like his aggressiveness and the method in which he's scored. It's not purely been goals. He's pushing up the ground. He's looking to be involved. He's not going to score massive. He's really not. Hopefully there's better options that present themselves in the next 7 days, but I don't hate Blakiston just because no early buy and he's guaranteed a game. Artie Jones looked good. He's not guaranteed a game. Liam Reedy, not guaranteed a game. Mitch Edwards from Geelong, he might play, not guaranteed. Blakiston, at a terrible team like North Melbourne, no offense North Melbourne fans, will play from day dot, and I can't see a way he gets dropped. He might score 12 in a game, which would be a disaster, but the job security is rock solid for now. And then finally, my last selection, my flex. Now, a lot of people in the past have gone with Rucks as their flex. I did that last year. It was a great way to approach it, I thought. It was tried. It was tried and tested because Rucks always scored the most and you get the most value out of them at the same time. So last year I started with Gawn and TDK, I know, and my flex was Matthew Flynn. Maybe not amazing. Gawn was fantastic. TDK started well, then dropped off a little bit. Then I had to trade him just before he absolutely bottomed out because he stopped caring about playing for Carlton. And Matthew Flynn, well, he got dropped pretty quickly. Then he came back in and scored 140 and I traded him back in, okay? I'm not saying I make great trades. I'm not saying that at all. But what I'm saying is the flex position is something you got to consider for this year as a moving chess piece. It's more of a magnet. So I've got $440,000 there. I'm looking to pick a mid-pricer there. And if that mid-pricer fails, we shift to the one that's hot. Not every mid-price selection will pop off. It's just not how SuperCoach works. Now, I've got Blakiston in my back line, as you can see there. I think he's going to be a pretty safe mid-price selection due to his job security. But there's other players which aren't in my team right now that could be very handy mid-price options. I'm talking about Caleb Windsor from Melbourne. He dropped 115 in the Pracky match. Now, that practice match only had a half of actual play, so that's been projected out to be 120. He's on, probably 60, 70 when that match ended. But CBAs, a midfield role, wing role as well, which isn't as encouraging, but more time on ball is why people are picking Caleb Windsor for this season. He's about 280,000. I don't hate the selection. My question would be, just how good will Melbourne be? I mean, Jack Steele will be the number one mid, you'd think. Harvey Langford walks into their number two midfield position. He's probably fighting around that third midfield position with a couple other players. Does he get enough centre bounce involvement, or centre ball up involvement, I'm not sure. I think he's one to monitor and think about over the next 7 days. Hopefully we get a little bit more insight into what his exact role is, but I haven't really knocked down the door and said, I need Caleb Windsor in my team just yet, because at 280 grand, he needs to perform mid-80s to make it worthwhile. He needs to make it probably 130 grand. That is not something that I can guarantee you. It's not something I can sit here and say that'll absolutely happen, because last year he got the centre bounces. He got them. For 3 rounds, he got 40, 50, and I think 70 CBAs. He did nothing with them. He scored like 50s and 70s. Now, I know Melbourne season was done, but he's still got one of the best tap-out artists in history in Max Gawn hitting the ball down his throat. So if he can't do it with Max Gawn, he won't do it with anyone else. That would be my only worry. Another mid-price selection I want to talk about is Tanner Brun. Tanner Brun from Geelong was absolutely on fire what feels like 10 days ago against Carlton in their practice match. He had 10, 11 touches in the first quarter, playing off the half back line. I think he settled to, an 80 or so, or 90 in SuperCoach, which is fine, but he went into the midfield. And if you've owned Tanner Brun in the past, which I have, that's not what you want. He's not a great midfielder. He doesn't get a lot of cheap pill in the midfield, not a high score involvement player. It was all very slow and contested and little handballs. But he looked a lot quicker, looked a lot more explosive, and he looked like someone that demanded the football when we saw in that practice match against the Blues. I've got Tanner in my team at the moment. But as I said, it is a bit of a moving chess piece to find the right mid-pricer that pops. Like, they can't all pop. And then you're going to be stuck with mid-price crap, unfortunately. And that is the death of most SuperCoach teams. Mid-price shit. Brun is in my team right now, as you can see, in my flex position. But I don't know. I'm not entirely certain whether he is the one. Whether he's going to be a great mid-price selection, or he's going to be someone we have to trade in round 4 or 5, or even round 2 or 3, because someone else is popping. Is there any other player at that mid-price bracket that you think, hold on, Slam, you've missed one here, you've missed the trick? Let's look at the most owned players. Caden Coleman, I didn't mind, but I don't know how well he's going to score. He played half forward in the first pracky, then he went to the back line with his more natural position and played pretty decent there as well. But I don't know. They've got an early bye. He hasn't exactly knocked the door down from a scoring perspective. Zorko is still there. Obviously, Jasper Fletcher is still there as well. Back when he was averaging 87 a couple of years ago, pre-knee injury, Zorko was playing as a half forward and Jasper Fletcher was either not on the list or a first-year player. So it's not quite the same situation as what was happening when he was lining it up, when he was scoring 100 points in a grand final against Collingwood. Things have changed slightly. I'd like to see it, and we will in opening round. The other player I want to change right now was to take Selwood out of my team and was to pick Uland, because Zeke Uland has been picked for his debut, which is on Friday night against Geelong. So I think for now we can pick Uland, even though he's at that elevated price, just because of the job security. We think he's going to play for at least the first 4 to 5 weeks, judging by the fact that the Gold Coast Suns have picked him to start their season. They believe in the talent. They believe in what someone should have been a top 5 pick, if not for the academies, and they think that he's going to have a pretty good role, replacing, I think, Braden Fiorini out on a wing for the Gold Coast. Back to the mid-price selection, back to my flex selection and who we're going to pick. It's Tanner Bruhn at the moment, but there are other couple of names to consider. You could consider Jacob Farrow, who's in 30% of teams. I'm not sure whether Jacob Farrow will be selected and what he will score live, just because Essendon's backline is pretty much healthy, apart from Jordan Ridley. Is Ridley the same role as Farrow? Maybe. I see Ridley more as a bigger interceptor who can play on key position forwards if required. Farrow is a very skinny 18-year-old kid who's mainly operating out on a flank with his elite kicking skills, but I'm not sure whether Farrow will play in round 1. As I said, Caleb Windsor at $283,000 is a pretty decent selection as a mid-pricer. Sammy Lawler at $300,000. A lot of people like Sam Lawler. I don't as much, just because I don't know if the midfield role exists for him. I know he's going to get CBAs. I know he'll go forward and kick goals, but also the injury history. I don't know if Richmond are going to be ramping him up for big minutes, let alone in the midfield in year 2. That could be something more for next year. And then we're looking at the sub 15% owned players like a Jordan De Goey. Jordan De Goey is $320,000. I don't dislike De Goey. I've got to be honest with you. I really don't dislike De Goey. My issue with him would be the injury risk. It'd be the fact he hasn't averaged 90 like ever. He's like a high 80s player. The year they won the premiership, he was pretty good. He also missed a month of football for knocking out Elijah Hewitt. So there's always that constant suspension or injury risk with De Goey because he's built to play later in the year. He's not built to play the first 10 weeks of the season, but at $320,000, he's priced to average 59. He's probably going to average mid-80s. So I do see value in a Jordan De Goey selection, but not for me at this moment. Then you look at the other kids I haven't picked, like a Jack Watkins or a Patrick Retschko. You need to find some more information on them. And you've also got Finn O'Sullivan. Now, Finn O'Sullivan is one I'm warming towards more as the season gets closer. We see George Wardlaw won't play for the North Melbourne in the early days with that hamstring injury. Finn O'Sullivan has been earmarked for a midfield role. Pick 2 seasons ago. You don't let that sort of player just sit on a halfback flank or a wing. You want to get them involved in the action, particularly when you're a struggling club. So I think O'Sullivan could average 85 to 90. That is possible. And priced at 58 at the moment with no early buy, he's someone I'm strongly considering as we get closer to the first games of the season. Then there's a bunch of other kids like your Sam Butler. He's not a kid. Your Braden Cook, who could be used as bench options or even a flex option. But right now, I don't see anyone that's screaming, pick me out of all these selections. I'm going to go back to having Tanner Bruhn as my flex at $276,000 with $83,000 on my bench in reserve in case it needs to be used prior to round 1 or even after the first round if my team looks like absolute shit. Personally, I never trade after round 1 because it's one game of data. There's no need to make one of your 40 trades that early in the year. But hopefully, we don't mean to make any trades in the first 3 weeks because this is the perfect team. That's my side for 2026, or at least for the next 6 days until I change it all up again. I'm Slam Talk Sports. I hope you all enjoyed my SuperCoach team reveal for 2026. You can see it there on YouTube or you listen to it on Spotify. I'll be back next week to lock in my SuperCoach team. But until then, you know where to follow me on TikTok, on Instagram, on YouTube where you're watching me currently, on Spotify, and of course on Twitter /X where I give out all my opinions on sports and betting and really anything in this goddamn crazy world. I'll see you all next week. You are listening to Slam Talks Sports.